Right, let's move to this issue, and it's to do with our relations, really, with the rest of the world. Heads of state from Zambia, Senegal, Congo, Uganda, Egypt and South Africa are planning a trip to Kiev and Moscow to try and find a negotiated solution to the war currently underway between Russia and Ukraine. President Cyril Ramaphosa saying yesterday that the presidents of the two warring nations have actually agreed to receive this mission, and the initiative has been given the blessing of the United Nations as well. At the same time, South Africa is still trying to manage the fallout from the allegations last Thursday by the US ambassador that we have given arms to Russia, that took place in December last year. Of course, this is something the government has categorically denied, but still no clear explanation as to why that Russian frigate docked at the Simonstown naval base last December. Let's talk about the peace plan and the latest on this diplomatic storm with foreign policy journalist for the Daily Maverick, Peter Fabricius. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Let's deal with the peace talk plan first. Let's not forget, Cyril Ramaphosa was the chief negotiator for the ANC in the early 90s. Part of the reason why a peaceful settlement was in fact successfully negotiated for this country. Do you think that they can perhaps make a difference? I mean, what do you know of their mandate? They seem to have the blessing of both sides, but do you have any concrete idea of how they're going to go about this?
To be honest with you, no. Look, I think it's a hugely ambitious task. I mean, any peace effort obviously is something that should be undertaken, I guess. And so you've got six countries, African countries, willing to undertake the mission. You have both Putin and Zelensky willing to talk to them. That's great. So that shouldn't be something that you turn down. But it just seems to me that the two sides are just so, yawningly wide apart that a deal, an overall peace deal, just seems to be extremely unlikely. I mean, Zelensky announced the fact that he had spoken to Ramaphosa from Rome, and he's been in Europe basically looking for reinforcement and arms. And last night, Russia more heavily perhaps than before, bombarded Kiev. So yeah, I mean, I know sometimes in the past, the peace is preceded by a storm of increased warfare, but I'm not very optimistic, to be honest.
If we look back at sort of seemingly intractable conflicts that actually are now calm, Northern Ireland, 1998, former US President Bill Clinton, he played a key role in those negotiations. Obviously, both sides in the Northern Ireland conflict, I think, were ready to talk after many, many years of fighting. But sometimes the role of an outsider, and I think even in South Africa's situation, there was an outsider who came and helped at the 11th hour. Is there something to be said for an outside view on a conflict that can perhaps create a sense of, okay, let's really break this open and get down to what we need to sort out?
Yeah, I think you may be right that an outside mediation element is needed. It's just a question of when, I think, and in a way, well, I mean, it's been going for over a year, and yet this conflict is still in a way not showing any signs of a resolution that can be envisaged, other than by warfare. Okay, the other condition that's often necessary, or in different cases necessary for a peace to be successful, is that both sides have fought themselves to a standstill. And I'm not quite sure that is the case. I mean, there are people, even in the US, who are suggesting that Ukraine, for example, cannot afford to keep fighting because it's been systematically destroyed. Its population is being decimated, and its infrastructure is being destroyed. But it's very difficult for a country to accept that it should sign a peace deal when that means sacrificing quite a large chunk of your territory, which is all that Russia would accept right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult, starting point, because they seized parts of Crimea in 2014, I think it was, and they're going to want territory. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this delegation from Africa makes much progress at all. Of course, at the same time, we've got problems closer to home with these allegations from the US ambassador. Of course, you and I spoke on the night that the story broke. So it's been about 6 days, 6 days since then, that Ruben Brigitte said, "I'll bet my life on South Africa giving arms." The United States has actually yet to provide any evidence of that. Our government, since coming out quite strongly saying we have not done this, do you think the Americans could have got it wrong? I mean, they've got it wrong before. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq springs to mind.
Yeah, of course, that is a possibility. I mean, it is possible that Brigitte just got extremely frustrated by what he saw as a steady, series of actions by South Africa, which were taking it further and further away from its claim to be non-aligned. On the other hand, he's a disciplined, and professional diplomat who's unlikely to have gone rogue on his own government. When you talk about the evidence, they haven't. When Sidney Mufamadi's mission was in the US at the same time as that was breaking, and there was a briefing on Saturday where Zane Dangor, the Director General for International Relations, was asked whether the US had provided any concrete evidence while they were there in the US, and he said not. But he said intelligence officials there had said that I think he said may provide it when this inquiry, which Ramaphosa's announced, gets underway, which obviously they would have to do. I mean, they can't make an allegation like that and then refuse to offer any evidence whatever. So that may be how long we have to wait.
And of course, what the South Africans could do is get to the heart of what on earth was going on at that naval base in December last year with Lady R. And it seems to have taken an awfully long time. I challenged the finance minister on that last night. He said, no, it hasn't taken long. We've started looking at this in January. But there are key ministers who should know. You don't just sail into a naval base without a lot of people approving it. There's huge concern, of course, that this diplomatic fallout is going to lead to some real problems for South Africa in terms of our trade deals. Our rand, of course, has slid shockingly. Where do you think it's going on a diplomatic front, Peter?
I don't think it's going too well. Look, I mean, the was there to try and prevent things going completely off the rail, and it might have kept them, kept the train on the tracks for now. I think a lot is going to depend on that inquiry, because if that inquiry, credibly, plausibly exonerates South Africa, and I mean, we're not just talking about the government, but possibly rogue elements or whatever, which do exist, I believe. If they exonerate, then the US is going to be very embarrassed and have to back down. But if not, then some quite serious action is going to have to be taken by South Africa to restore relations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Foreign policy journalist with the Daily Maverick, Peter Fabricius.